Tashdile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Bhatt with another edition of weekly news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama inaugurates the conference on the Great Commentarial Text on Guhyasamaja Tantra. More than 6,000 people from 60 countries gathered for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teaching on Heart Sutra. 42 countries pledge 8 action plans on Tibet as the 8th International Tibet Support Group concludes. Tibet Policy Institute convenes first ever Mongolia-Tibet Cultural and Religious Symposium. CTA launches COP25 Climate Action for Tibet Campaign. President Dr Sangay interacts with Zuckerberg Business leaders. His Holiness the Dalai Lama inaugurated the conference on the Great Commentarial Text on Guhyasamaja Tantra at Gyuto Monastery in Dharamshala on Saturday last week. The ceremony marked the 600th birth anniversary of Gyuchen Dorji Chang Jetsun Kungar Dhundup, the founder of Gyuto Tantric Monastery. The day also marked the 600th anniversary of J. Lama Tsongkhapa bestowing Gyuchen Sherab Singye. The day commemorated the tri-600th anniversary in grateful memorial of the great tantric teacher, father and scion. His Holiness spoke on Gyuchen Sherab Singye and Gyuchen Dorji Chang Jetsun Kungar Dhundup on the importance of upholding the contributions of the monastery towards the Buddha Dharma. The ceremony included long-life prayer offerings to His Holiness by Gyuto Tantric Monastery and former Gyuto Members Association. His Holiness also launched the latest editions of the 3 texts, including manuscripts compared Gyuto edition of Ngarim Chemmo. At the request of the Koreans, His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave a 3-day teaching on Heart Sutra to more than 6,000 people from 60 countries in Dharamshala on Monday this week. His Holiness explained the first lines of Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard at one time the Blessed One had entered into meditative absorption on the varieties of phenomena called the appearance of the profound. The word appearance refers to conventional existence while profound indicates ultimate existence. Although things are empty of intrinsic independent existence, they still have a conventional appearance. This, His Holiness suggested, also refers to dependent arising. 180 political leaders, MPs, Tibet support groups, policy makers, pro-democracy activists, intellectuals, including Chinese scholars from 42 countries, deliberated on galvanizing global Tibet advocacy at the 8th International Conference of Tibet Support Groups in Dharamshala on Sunday this week. The 3-day conference is dedicated to strengthening the efforts into driving the Tibet issue on the forefront, build a conducive environment for multilateral coalitions on proactive Tibet campaigns, and to further the Central Tibetan Administration's middle way policy with a view to renewing the Sino-Tibet dialogue to resolve the Tibet issue. The discussions were largely on charting out concrete action plans for the future cause of global Tibet advocacy, mainly on optimizing engagement with the Chinese authorities on Tibet issue. In his keynote address, CTA President Dr Lobsang Singye said that the era of the 1990s People's Resistance Movement is returning in full power, challenging authoritarian and repressive regimes around the world.
So 1990s was the good old days. Even for Tibetans, that was the peak, or at the peaking stage of the Tibetan movement. Why? Mass movements around the world shook the earth and brought changes, democracy and human rights around the world. So now the question is, are we in 1990s or not? If we are not, then the movement of the Tibet also will be sidelined. But I'll make the argument that we are on the verge of entering or already entering the 1990s stage.
Members of the Parliament, Inkatha Freedom Party, Khulego Lengwa, Hong Kong activist Joseph Cheng, World Uyghur Congress, Zumrit I. Arkin, Professor of University of Technology, Sydney, Chong Yi-Feng, Director of Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, Fute Fort Liao, Chairman of South Mongolia Congress, Inu Daichin, and Michael Danby, former MP and former co-chair of Australia Parliamentary Support Group for Tibet, were the panel speakers. 8th International Tibet Support Group Conference concluded on Monday this week, urging the Chinese government to resume the dialogue and engaged in earnest negotiations with representatives of His Holiness the Dalai Lama or the CTA without delay, among other declarations. The issue of reincarnation was discussed in depth by the members, and they unanimously concluded that all decisions regarding the reincarnation of the 14th Dalai Lama are the exclusive responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his Gande Potang Trust. Interference of any form of the People's Republic of China will be deemed illegitimate and further be subjected to sanctions by the international community. They said, adding that they fully support the resolutions passed at the 3rd Special General Meeting of the Tibetans on the reincarnation.
Again, some people say, how can you believe in yourself so much in nonviolence? Because we are Buddhists. We believe in notion of impermanence. Normally people resort to violence to kill your enemy. Because we believe in notion of impermanence and nonviolence, we don't have to kill. They die. We didn't kill Mao Zedong. He died. We didn't kill Zhou Enlai. He died. We didn't kill General Chu Te. He died. We didn't kill Mao Zedong. He died. We don't have to resort to violence. That's why we believe in non-violence. Why? You don't have to kill anyone. They die. We just have to survive. We just have to strengthen. We just have to sustain. And victory will be ours. So you are the reason why we survived for 60 years. You are the reason why we are strong for 60 years. You are the reason why we are sustained or why we are sustaining for 60 years. And the final S is succeed. It's coming very soon.
Chief guest Mr. Ajay Singh, President of Indo-Tibet Friendship Association, during the valedictory session, highlighted that call for freedom of Tibet must reach every corner of the world, triggering from every province, district and states of every country.
The message regarding the freedom of Tibet must go out to the world from each and every country, from each province, each state, each district in every country. Napoleon once said, he said, I am not afraid of 4,000 soldiers as I am afraid of 4 newspapers. So media, the media, a positive media for Tibet, for the people inside Tibet who have been undergoing such hardship and suffering, we've got to let them know that we are working hard for them. And as His Holiness expressed in our beautiful audience that we were so fortunate to have yesterday, we've got to carry on this work first diplomatically, pragmatically, very wisely. Autonomy first and freedom ultimately. We have got to do that.
The delegates of the conference also received an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
We have 180 participants from 43 countries, have been with us for 30 plus years. And we went through the past resolutions, and especially of the first Tibet Support Group conference in 1990. And we passed 8 resolutions, of which I think we have implemented, except for 2, we implemented all 6.
So now, unfortunately, the Chinese communists, you see, they really want to keep Tibet permanently. So they really, you see, try to eliminate Tibetan, or say, including Tibetan language. But now, several decades, more suppression, more determination. Tibetan people, because of this knowledge, this history, Tibetan, quite proud people. And naturally, the Chinese love their own country, their own culture. Similarly, we also love our own country, our own culture. So over 70 years, Tibetan sort of spirit very strong inside Tibet.
Speaking at the first ever Mongolia-Tibet Cultural and Religious Symposium, President Dr. Sangay expressed support and solidarity with Southern Mongolia, saying that the people of Tibet and Southern Mongolia are both subjected to severe repressions under the Chinese regime. The symposium was convened by Tibet Policy Institute, the official think tank of CTA, and was held in Dharamshala on Wednesday this week. Dr. Sangay said the gross and systematic violation of fundamental human rights and freedoms in Tibet is observed in the same severity in southern Mongolia. The people of Tibet and southern Mongolia are facing political repression, cultural assimilation, economic marginalization and environmental destructions at the hands of People's Republic of China. Mr. Arya, director of the Tibet Policy Institute, presented a paper in which he said China was only a part of the Mongol Yuan dynasty, neither the founder nor the inheritor of the dynasty. The symposium included panel discussions on Buddhism in Tibet and Mongolia, past, present and future Mongol-Tibet relations and human rights and ecology. Both Mongolian and Tibetan scholars appreciated the symposium and agreed to have more scholarly exchange in future. The Central Tibetan Administration launched the second climate action for Tibet, the Earth's Third Pole campaign in Dharamshala on Wednesday this week. The campaign is to urge the world leaders to recognize the global ecological importance of the Tibetan Plateau and make Tibet central to any discussion on global climate change. The COP25 UN Climate Summit is to be held in Spain on December 2nd to 13th, 2019. Dr. Sangay spoke on the deteriorating climatic conditions in Tibet, which will have disastrous consequences for the global society in general and in particular for the people of South Asia. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, Nobel Peace Laureate and advocate for world's environment, has repeatedly stressed that climate change is not the concern of just one or two nations. It is an issue that affects all humanity and every living being on this earth, and that there is a real need for a greater sense of global responsibility based on a sense of the oneness of humanity. Dr. Sangay urged the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to recognize the global ecological significance of the Tibetan Plateau and make Tibet central to any discussion on global climate change. To this end, CTA announced a 5-point call to action. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change must recognize the global ecological importance of the Tibetan Plateau. UNFCCC should strengthen climate change research on the Tibetan Plateau. The Chinese government must respect the traditional knowledge of and way of life in Tibet. The Chinese government must strictly regulate urbanization and tourism in Tibet. The international community need to carry forward this global climate action for Tibet, the Earth's Third Pole campaign. CTA President Dr. Sangay received a delegation of entrepreneurs and business leaders led by the Zuckerberg Institute in Dharamshala on Wednesday this week. During the interaction, Dr. Sangay discussed his leadership style in administrating the office of the elected president of the 6 million Tibetans and the inspiration that he constantly draws from the Buddhist principles of compassion and non-violence. Further discussions followed on the topic of the middle way approach, CTA strategies towards its mission, and social, emotional and ethical learning program.
You are looking at a leader whose role has the least impact because it's an exile, right? But whatever happens around the world impacts my role, but my role has least impact around the world. So you are looking at that kind of leadership, you know. If you want to find a tough leader, the toughest job, every job is tough. If you look at the toughest job, perhaps this could be perhaps the toughest job?
And so the reason we came to Dharamsala is that I've worked with the Tibetan Buddhist community for 10 years, and I felt it was imperative and important to come to Dharamsala to learn from Buddhist leaders, the Central Tibetan Administration, organizations within the Tibetan community, to really talk about not only secular ethics and social ethics, but particularly mission. I've always been deeply inspired by communities in exile. I've worked with communities in exile for 10 years, and it was our mission to come together in partnership with the Tibetan community and to really not only serve the Tibetan community, but learn from its Buddhist belief system.
That's all for this week. See you next time and have a great weekend.